Have faith that love is the way. When all is said and done, it really is love, compassion, empathy, understanding, and acceptance of ourselves and each other that will define us and our place in this world and beyond. That really was the biggest takeaway from my interview with Sean Cahill regarding the current UAP issue. You know, it doesn't matter what you believe or who you reach up to. What matters is the intent that pushes you forward, what drives your internal motivations. How we feel, how we act, what we think, has a lot more of a connection to what makes up our reality and what happens within it. There was a lot to ask someone like Cahill about what he has seen firsthand and what he knows regarding the UAP issue. But far from a discussion about spacecraft and strangers from a strange world, it was a thoughtful and compelling discussion on humans, our humanity, and our understanding of history. Incredibly, the answers to knowing more about UAPs might come from a better understanding of ourselves. As a former U.S. Navy Chief Master of Arms for the USS Princeton, part of the USS Nimitz carrier battle group, his credentials as a key protectorate for the fleet shows his pedigree as a trained and trusted observer. He was also a first-hand eyewitness to the infamous 2004 Tic Tac UAP sighting, initially documented several years ago by the New York Times. His work as a helpful and rational voice in the complex and often convoluted discussions around UAPs has already helped provide a simple and clear path for others to follow. What remains is the willingness and ability to pick up the information blocks that now lay strewn around us and assemble a rational, cogent portrait of some of what is happening. It is now established fact. There are strange objects visible to humans and are various levels of technology. Objects of varying shapes and descriptions that can perform and operate in ways that defy acceptable paradigms. Where they come from, why, and how is the mystery to the mainstream. However, it can be argued with rational intent there is certain knowledge about this phenomenon possessed by only a few in secret, giving them an advantage over our information deficit. As civilians, we haven't seen the classified data that Cahill has. He knows their satellite videos, undersea sonar readings, aerial data, ground surveillance, much of which can be brought together to corroborate single events recorded over multiple platforms, using the most powerful equipment in the world's most powerful army to do it. Information that, should the public see it, might very well move the conversational goalposts much wider afield, but the narrow, almost looping discussion of the same talking points over and over has really failed to advance the discussion beyond the 2017 breakthrough article published by the New York Times. However, that may be about to change. You know, my sense from Cahill is that a lot of work is being done to bring as much of this information public as possible. His good friend, the former head of the Pentagon's ATIP program that examined UAPs, Lou Elizondo, recently admitted to facing difficulty in finding trustworthy people to brief about the UAP phenomenon back when he worked for the Pentagon. Changing leadership, interests, and politics eventually helped rob the program of its funding and key supporters inside. But recent moves in Washington indicate efforts behind the scenes are accelerating to make up for lost time, and reports from Congress is a huge part of making that possible. Now, the goal is to help change how and why we obtain good, actionable information that we, together, as the general public, collectively, can start to elevate the level of discourse around UAPs, something that is desperately needed. Cahill indicates there is important information coming that will change how we discuss these issues in the future. As Elizondo said recently, it's an issue that will impact all of humanity, and we can no longer leave it up to the power brokers and those with excessive leverage over people to make all the decisions about this for us. How this arrives and when is the mystery, but it almost doesn't matter. The totality of the grand tapestry that is humanity and our history may very well reach the limitations of our vision when it happens. Humans are great at ignoring things they don't want to see and don't understand. But some things will be too great to ignore about this issue. As the saying goes, if you can't see the forest for the trees, then perhaps modern society is still struggling to comprehend that little patch of moss without realizing it sits on a corner of bark in a giant forest ecosystem we don't yet understand is there, but will. More than what modern data recordings tell us, there is also room to ask what history and the roots of our collective faiths and belief systems, secular and not, have in common, and more importantly, why. The farther back you go in history, it seems the clearer the picture becomes. This is where our social institutions, especially those rooted in the history of modern civilization, have a responsibility to finally share more of what they know to be true. There is a reason the Vatican archives are a vast, wondrous, and fiercely restricted collection of knowledge and human history like no other. Within its walls are likely answers and new questions, some very uncomfortable, but ones that still deserve to be asked. The great fear for religious institutions is that disclosure, or deeper knowledge of our metaphysical past, and the common roots of God or gods, angels, demons, whatever you want to call it, however you want to define it, is actually the kind of validation that belief can't provide, and with a different context. There is very likely evidence that can help turn our various beliefs into facts. But for what gain? And for whom? I guess that's one of the fundamental questions. But I believe, like Cahill, that we are all capable of knowing and discovering more about ourselves and this issue together. But can this knowledge be monetized? Can it be proprietary? Should it be controlled? It's hard to look at those questions and think greed and power won't continue to corrupt the process, as it has continually done. Recent revelations this year by the former head of France's Foreign Intelligence Service, the DGSE, said France has recordings of UAPs underwater moving faster than the speed of sound. Government officials all over the world are dropping more and more pieces of the mosaic for us to assemble, but only if we want to. However, what Sean Cahill intimated to me was that this issue is moving faster and that more information is coming than people realize. We just shouldn't expect a simple, single answer to give us all the information. As Cahill and Elizondo have both said, this is an issue that will be unfolding for years, likely decades, not days, and won't be solved in a single congressional report. Cahill says it appears that UAP have been interacting with humanity for much longer than people realize, but the potential evidence, if we look, might be found everywhere. From the Foo Fighters of World War II, the Nuremberg incident of 1561, and other European cities in the days around the incident, Mayan carvings, ancient Egyptian texts, the Sumerians' worship of Anunnaki, even the Vimana from ancient Hindu texts. History loves to repeat itself, along with accounts of UAPs and their visitors. There is much lying around before our eyes that doesn't make sense. It will soon become harder and harder to ignore all of it. Which brings us back to faith. No matter how we arrived here as a species, we have to have faith that our own sense of right and wrong, love, compassion, peace, empathy, and understanding is the only path that will carry us deep into the future, uncertain as it is. Because without a unified belief for a higher purpose, for the good of humanity, then we might be destined to once again crumble back into the pages of history before another phoenix rises from our ashes and society tries again. I'm Sean. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. There's new stuff coming all the time. If you'd like to hear more about any interviews that I give or the topics that I talk about, send us a message. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. There's another great video coming up next.